Trump posted on Truth Social this morning, and I want to give you his exact words, because the exact words are the story. He wrote, "Yesterday, in a meaningless vote, the House voted 4 bad Republicans and all of the Democrats to limit my war powers, right in the middle of my final negotiations to end the war with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Who would do such an unpatriotic thing? They know where the negotiations stand. The 4 Republicans, that is a whole other story. They are grandstanders. They should be ashamed of themselves. Read that post carefully. Not for the insults, those are routine. Read it for the word he chose to describe what happened. Meaningless. That is the word the White House is using today. Not a setback, not a defeat. Meaningless. And I want to spend this entire analysis explaining why calling it meaningless is itself the most important signal about what the 215 to 208 vote actually means. Because a president who was truly unaffected by a vote does not post about it on social media the morning after. A president who had genuinely won does not name the 4 people who voted against him and call them grandstanders. You do not wake up and write a paragraph about a meaningless thing. The volume of the response tells you exactly how much the number landed. Here is what actually happened on June 3rd and why the sequence of events before the vote matters as much as the vote itself. The House War Powers resolution that passed yesterday was not the first attempt. It was the fourth. The first 3 failed. They failed narrowly. The most recent previous attempt ended in a 212 to 212 tie on May 14th. Democrats celebrated that tie because a tie on this specific kind of measure meant Republicans were running out of room. The direction of travel was visible in the margin. First attempts failed by 7, then by 5, then tied. The fourth attempt passed by 7 in the opposite direction. That is not a coincidence. That is a trend line with a clear trajectory. But here's the detail that most coverage is not centering properly. The vote that passed yesterday was supposed to happen 2 weeks ago. It was scheduled for May 21st. House Republican leaders pulled it at the last minute, abruptly canceled it, and sent members home for the Memorial Day recess. The reason they pulled it was explicit. They did not have the votes to defeat it. Democratic Representative Gregory Meeks, who sponsored the resolution, told reporters directly at the time,
"Republicans pulled this vote because they knew they were going to lose it. They know this war is a political and strategic disaster."
Speaker Mike Johnson did not answer questions from reporters as he left the chamber. He walked past and said nothing. That silence from the man who runs the House floor schedule is the clearest possible signal of what the cancellation meant. You do not go silent because you are winning. You go silent because you canceled a vote you could not win and need to exit the building before someone asks you to explain why. The 2 weeks of Memorial Day recess that Johnson bought by canceling the vote did not produce what he needed. It did not shift Republican support back to the White House position. It did not change the math. When the House returned in June, the 4 Republicans who were always going to cross over crossed over. Thomas Massie of Kentucky, Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, Tom Barrett of Michigan, Warren Davidson of Ohio. Every Democrat voted yes, including Jared Golden of Maine, who had voted against the resolution on the 3 previous attempts. Golden flipping means the Democratic side of the chamber became unanimous. That unanimity is significant, and I want to explain why it matters beyond the margin. The previous 3 failed votes had Golden as the holdout. His previous no votes gave Republicans a talking point. They could say the opposition to the war was not even unified within the Democratic caucus. A Democrat from Maine voted with Republicans. The war is not unpopular across party lines. That talking point is gone now. Golden voted yes. Every single Democrat voted yes. The 215 to 208 result includes total Democratic unity plus 4 Republicans. That combination, full party opposition plus bipartisan defection, is structurally different from everything that came before it. Now, I want to address the White House argument directly because it has real weight and deserves to be engaged honestly. The White House position is that the resolution is legally meaningless, and that is technically accurate in a specific and important way. This is a concurrent resolution. It is not a bill. It does not require the president's signature. It does not carry the force of law. Even if it passes the Senate, which it has not yet done in its final form, it cannot be vetoed because it is never presented to the president. The administration argued in a formal statement of administrative policy last month that the hostilities that began on February 28th have terminated with the ceasefire ordered by the president on April 7th. America is not legally at war, the White House argues, because the president declared a ceasefire. The War Powers Resolution's 90-day clock, the mechanism that triggered this vote in the first place, does not apply to a conflict the president says has ended. Speaker Johnson made the same argument from the House floor before the vote. He said Iran declared war on America 47 years ago, and that the president's actions were a legitimate exercise of executive power to protect the country. He called the resolution an effort to weaken the president's hand in active negotiations. That framing, weakening the negotiator, is the strongest version of the argument against the vote, and it deserves to be taken seriously. All of that is coherent. The legal mechanism is genuinely limited. A concurrent resolution without the force of law does not end a war. The Senate has not yet passed it on final vote, and undermining a negotiating president during active diplomacy is a real cost that the resolution's supporters have to own. But here is what that argument cannot account for, and what makes the 215 to 208 number significant, regardless of its legal weight. The vote is not a legal instrument. It is a political measurement, and what it measured on June 3rd is the exact level of Republican support for this war inside the chamber that Trump's own party controls. Out of 219 House Republicans, 4 voted against their president on his central foreign policy action while active negotiations are happening, and while Iran struck a civilian airport in Kuwait on the same day. 4 Republicans looked at all of that, the ongoing war, the live diplomacy, the Iranian attack that morning, and still voted yes on ending it. That is not legal force, that is information. And the information it contains is more damaging to the White House than any formal constraint would be. Here is the underlying number that explains why 4 Republican defections in a 219-member caucus is more significant than it appears on its surface. House Republican leaders canceled the vote on May 21st precisely because they did not have the margin to defeat it without absences. That means the true Republican count against the White House was not 4. It was at least 5 or 6, possibly more, who would have voted yes if the vote had happened when scheduled. Johnson bought 2 weeks and a Memorial Day recess, and spent that time pressuring members not to cross over. The result of all that effort was that 4 crossed anyway. The recess held some in line. It did not hold enough. And the members who were held in line through pressure rather than conviction are the members whose votes are available again the next time this comes to a floor. That number, the floor of Republican defections under maximum pressure, is what the 215 to 208 tells you. Not how many Republicans voted against Trump today, how many are holding because of pressure rather than belief. And pressure is a finite resource in a midterm election year. That midterm dimension is the part of this story that every Republican in a competitive district absorbed yesterday afternoon when the gavel came down. The November 2026 midterms are 5 months away. Gas prices have risen nearly 60 cents per gallon since the war started on February 28th. The IEA has called this the biggest energy crisis in history. Lufthansa canceled 20,000 flights because jet fuel doubled. Republican Representative Meeks noted weeks ago that his Republican colleagues were feeling the pressure back home when they look at the cost of food and the cost of gas. That pressure is not theoretical. It is showing up in the numbers that Republican pollsters are reading in competitive districts. Marjorie Taylor Greene, once one of the most reliable Trump supporters in the entire Republican caucus, posted this week that Republicans are going to lose the House in the midterms, and maybe the Senate too, because Trump and Republicans sold America first, but instead governed America last. When someone who was in that caucus as recently as last year is publicly predicting a House loss over this war, the 4 Republican yes votes yesterday are not the ceiling of defection. They are a data point on a moving line. And here is the specific dynamic that the White House response cannot resolve. Trump called the 4 Republicans grandstanders and said they should be ashamed of themselves. Thomas Massie responded on the social media platform he uses by writing, "The People's House is sending a message. End this war." Tom Barrett posted that Congress has exclusive authority under the Constitution to declare and authorize war. Warren Davidson and Brian Fitzpatrick both have their own constituents, their own general election calculations, their own judgments about what their districts need from them in November. Trump calling them grandstanders does not change those calculations. It publicizes the disagreement. Every constituent in Fitzpatrick's Pennsylvania district who sees that Trump called their representative a grandstander for voting according to the Constitution now has a data point about the gap between what this president considers loyalty and what their representative considers his job. That gap is not a policy dispute. It is a structural fracture in a caucus that controls the House by a margin narrow enough that 4 defections passed a resolution against the president's explicit wishes. Watch 3 specific things in the next week as this resolution moves toward the Senate. The first is whether the Senate holds a final vote on its own version, and how the Republican count there compares to the 4 who crossed in the House. The Senate advanced a similar resolution to a final vote last month, with 4 Republican senators breaking ranks in the procedural vote. That number, 4 Senate Republicans willing to cross over on procedure, is the floor. A final vote in the Senate on the resolution now passed by the House gives those 4 a second opportunity, and gives any senator who held on procedure but wants to be on record for November a chance to vote yes on the substance. Watch the Senate Republican count specifically. If it reaches or exceeds 4, the resolution has passed both chambers. It does not become law, and Trump does not have to comply with it, but both chambers of Congress will have formally stated, on record, that this war was conducted without their authorization and should end. That is the political record that every Republican running in November carries into their district. The second is whether Speaker Johnson makes any public statement specifically about what happens next, and whether he schedules any additional Iran-related votes before the midterms. Johnson pulled the May vote by sending members home. He cannot use that tool again in the same way. The House is back. The vote happened. The loss is on the record. If Johnson now tries to prevent any further Iran-related votes from reaching the floor, he is managing the schedule to protect a president his chamber just formally rebuked. Every Democrat will run that contrast in every competitive district from now through November. Johnson's next public statement about the Iran war and what Congress should or should not do about it is the clearest signal of whether Republican leadership has absorbed what 215 to 208 actually means. The third is whether any of the 4 Republicans who voted yes face immediate public threats of primary challenges from the White House or from Trump-aligned outside groups. Trump called them grandstanders and said they should be ashamed. The next step in that playbook is a primary threat. Warren Davidson is from Ohio. Brian Fitzpatrick is from Pennsylvania. Tom Barrett is from Michigan. Thomas Massie is from Kentucky. If any of them receives a public statement from a Trump-aligned organization announcing a primary challenge or financial opposition in the next 7 days, that is the White House converting a symbolic political disagreement into a personnel confrontation. That confrontation, if it happens, does not stay contained to those 4 districts. Every other Republican member who has been holding their yes vote back because of leadership pressure now has to calculate whether crossing Trump costs them a primary fight. Some will decide that cost is too high. Others will calculate that their general election exposure in November is a bigger threat than a Trump primary. The math in each district is different, but the threat, if it comes, forces the calculation publicly in a way that holding the vote in private committee rooms does not. The White House said the resolution will not reach the president's desk. They are correct in the procedural sense, but a vote does not need to reach a desk to change the political landscape. The 215 to 208 is already on the record. The 4 names are already in the public domain. Every Republican member who voted no under pressure knows how close the margin was. And the war that Trump called a final negotiation when he posted on Truth Social this morning is now the war that his own Congress voted to end on the same day that Iran struck a civilian airport in Kuwait and the ceasefire held in name only while both sides kept shooting. Trump called the vote meaningless. The volume of his post this morning tells you everything about how meaningless it actually was.